Good morning. This is Ken Suddeth, and we're here with attorney Chad Dorsk for another edition of Legal Lions podcast. And we have a few questions this morning for Chad, but first, if you would just introduce yourself for our audience and let us know exactly who you are and what you do.
Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Chad Dorsk. My office is on Duke Street in the city of Norfolk. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I handle the state, local, and federal criminal charges. And I've done everything from first-degree murder all the way down to trespassing and driving offenses.
Well, thank you. So what we thought we'd do this morning is ask you the 5 worst mistakes people make when being arrested. So just to kind of set the stage, let's start with the basic. What inspired you to write a podcast, not a podcast, but a blog on your website about this topic?
Okay, well, I'd like to just reframe the issue. I think sort of what I was conceiving is, what are the 5 mistakes that people make when being pulled over by law enforcement? So you're in the car, you're driving down the road, maybe you're speeding, maybe you've run a red light, whatever it is, and the lights come on, and when the police are coming, we can go through the mistakes. Number 1 is stop as soon as possible. Pull over in a safe spot. Keep your hands down, no furtive movements. If the police are walking up to the vehicle and they see you moving your hands, turning around in the back seat, going in the glove box, the police may feel apprehensive and want to search the vehicle. Now, if you have something illegal that shouldn't be in the car, whether you know it's there or not, the police may have reasonable suspicion to search the car for officer safety. And if they find something and it's illegal, you're going to get arrested and go to jail. So don't do that.
Well, that brings up a point of why do you think, you've been doing this for many years, why do you think people act this way when they're arrested?
Well, one is they could have a guilty conscience. They know something is in the car, they're trying to conceal it. If the officer walks up to the car and they're looking in the window, whatever is in plain view is open season for a search. So if they see the butt of a gun, they say a baggie that looks like it has residue in it, they may ask you to get out of the vehicle. One of the things you don't want to do is take the police on a high-speed chase through the city of Norfolk or any other city. It's dangerous. And now you've elevated from maybe you have a traffic infraction to a felony eluding or hit and run or what have you.
So we're kind of basing this on the blog that's on your website, as I mentioned, and mistake number 1 on your blog is do not make a statement. So tell us about that. If you lead with do not make a statement, why is this such a crucial point?
Well, you can make a statement, just don't make an incriminating statement. Of course, you give your name, driver's license, information, whatever information the police want. But outside of your personal identifiers and things of that nature, you stay completely quiet.
So is there any situation at all when you're arrested where talking might help, or is silence always the best move?
Silence is always the best policy. And just remember that you do not have to do a field sobriety test. That is a voluntary DUI examination. So if an officer suspects that you're driving under the influence, and they ask you to do a series of tests, you may decline. You can also decline to answer any questions concerning your whereabouts, whether or not you've consumed alcohol or anything to that effect.
Okay, so mistake number 2 is not clearly asking for an attorney. What does it sound like when someone fails to clearly assert their right to counsel?
Well, that's interesting, Ken, because I've listened to a lot of police interviews, and sometimes people say, well, I'd like to have an attorney, but then they begin to incriminate themselves and engage with the officer. So they ask for an attorney, but they don't stick with that decision. If you're going to ask for an attorney, but also remain silent afterwards.
Is it important to say the phrase exactly, I do not want to make a statement and I want to speak to a lawyer?
Yes. Be very firm with your decision.
So any kind of vagueness, like maybe I should get a lawyer or should I talk to an attorney, can that be used against you in some way?
It cannot. You just have the right to remain silent.
Gotcha.
Embedded in the Constitution The right against unreasonable search and seizure, the right to remain silent, the right to have an attorney.
So mistake number 3, trying to talk your way out of it, which kind of fits with what we're saying. So this one feels like a trap people fall into all the time. What's the danger in trying to reason with the police once you're already under arrest?
Well, you can't reason with them in the respect that you cannot, what's the right wording? You have to follow police directives. You're not going to reason your way out of that. If the police have a directive, you follow it. If they say sit down on the curb, you sit down and stay until they're finished with their investigation. Don't try to convince the officer that you haven't done anything wrong. Don't discuss anything. Just sit there, be quiet, and eventually they'll go away.
So does the urge to talk your way out of something play into the police's advantage during an arrest?
Sure, whatever statements you make can and will be used against you later in a prosecution. It may confirm a piece of information that they're looking for. It may help with their investigation and lead to an arrest ultimately.
Have you seen situations where a client's attempt to explain something innocent later were twisted in a court?
I expect everything to be twisted in court later. Now, I also have seen situations where people try to explain a situation and it's rationally based, and the police officer acknowledges that and may send you off with a warning. It just depends.
Gotcha. Okay, mistake number 4, physically resisting arrest. And you touched on this earlier with a chase. Don't do that. But what's your message to someone who says, but I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I let them arrest me?
Exactly. Now, that's a big one. The one thing you don't want to get arrested for is assault on a police officer, because it carries a mandatory 6 months in prison and it's a felony. And if you place your hands on the officer to try to resist arrest, you will be arrested for assault on a police officer.
So that sounds like that would really complicate the case dramatically if you do anything like that. You're talking about a felony.
Correct. Now, you can distinguish between assault on a police officer and resisting arrest. Resisting arrest is just refusing to be arrested. As soon as you try to apply force to the officer, though, you've now assaulted the police officer. And that could be very common. It's very typical for offenses involving driving under the influence, where people aren't thinking rationally at the time. Maybe they've been triggered. Maybe they're afraid of the police. Either way, try to control yourself so you don't get arrested for a felony.
How would you, without getting too much into specifics, would you, if someone has made this terrible mistake and they've come to you, how do you approach a case where a client did resist arrest?
Well, if a client resisted arrest, you're just looking at a misdemeanor. If a client assaulted a police officer, now you're into deep mitigation. It's a very serious matter. In some jurisdictions, sometimes you can get the offense reduced to a misdemeanor or dismissed. In other jurisdictions, they have a zero tolerance policy and they want the conviction.
So mistake number 5, not calling a lawyer immediately. Why do you think people hesitate to call a lawyer even when they perhaps have one?
Well, sometimes people may not call an attorney because they don't know one. They don't know who to call. If they do have an attorney on retainer, that's very rare. People don't typically have an attorney on retainer unless they've already been arrested for something.
What are some things a lawyer can begin doing right away that can help the case once they give you a call?
The first thing we do when we discuss the case is we go through it thoroughly, and I analyze it for any defenses, any mitigation. I look at the jurisdiction, try to figure out which prosecutor may be assigned to the case. There's a lot of factors that go into trying a case or mitigating a case.
So you kind of touched on this, not having an attorney on retainer. Most people don't. Most people, I assume, think I'm never going to get in trouble. I'm not going to need this. But what would you say to that? I mean, I know you've said in some of our past conversations, even good people make mistakes. So would you recommend they carry, your business card along with them, or, what are your recommendations in that regard?
My recommendations are In the event that you come into contact with a police officer, that you cooperate as thoroughly as possible, but you do not discuss any merits of potential case you're involved in. You give your name, your address, your driver's license, your insurance, if you're driving, and you just remain silent, and then we can discuss the case afterwards.
So if someone listening remembers only one thing from today's episode, what do you think it should be?
The main thing to remember is don't make a bad situation worse. If you get stopped for driving under the influence, don't resist arrest, provide your information, but refuse the field sobriety test, refuse the preliminary breath test, which is the breath test that is done on the scene, and get a good attorney afterwards.
Well, that brings me to my last questions for those listening who might be scared about what could happen if they're arrested. What's your message to them, and how can they contact you?
You can contact me through the website, dorsklaw.com, or at the office phone number, 757-423-0271. And what I want you to do is think long and hard about your future, because when you come into contact with law enforcement, you can make a bad situation worse. Just sit there, be cooperative, wait for the process to unfold.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And hopefully these tips will help people, and definitely get in touch with Attorney Chad Dorsk if you need any help.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much.